My name's Adam Cheyer. I was co-founder of Siri. I was the technical co-founder. After Siri sold to Apple, I ran the Siri team at Apple for a couple of years. Then I started a new company called Viv Labs, um, and sold that to Samsung. I started a company called Sentient. It was the first large-scale machine learning company probably ever. We had more than 1 million CPUs and GPUs in the cloud, all the way back in 2007 or 8, which was way more than all of AWS, Amazon AWS, all of Microsoft Cloud, and we were a startup. We reached about almost $1 billion valuation and then exited. And then I was founding member and first developer of change.org, which is the world's largest petition platform. We have more than 500 million members. So AI is an amazing time, and there are incredible things you can do with it. And really what's brought me so much enjoyment and success and influence has been taking my ideas out into the world and trying to impact the world with them. And at the core, I mean, AI by itself is great, but I'm more interested in what do you do with it, and how do you get what you do with it out to do something important. So let's start at the beginning. 2010. We were a little startup. We had about 20 people, and we launched a free app in the App Store, and it was called Siri. And it was the first time you could actually talk to a phone, an application on an iPhone, and it would understand the intent. So it didn't just take the words and do search or information retrieval. You could say things like, get me 2 tickets to the basketball game tonight, and it would do it, and book. You could say things like, get me a taxi, send a taxi to my house, make a reservation at an Italian restaurant 3 Thursdays from now for 4 people. And you could do it in a conversation. No, what about Mexican instead? So we launched a free app in the App Store. About 2 weeks later, we get a phone call from Steve Jobs. He literally called us unannounced. He was like, hi, I'm Steve Jobs. Want to come over to my house tomorrow? And we talked about the future, about technology, about AI. Now, an interesting point is artificial intelligence in 2010, the phrase weren't used much. And I'll say a word about that. But basically, that conversation led to being acquired by Apple. And it looks like an overnight success. Launch a free app, 2.5 months later, you're working at Apple on the new version of Siri. Sounds so easy. But that overnight success, it took some work to get to that app. So before launching the app, it actually took us about 2.5 years to start the company, build the core technology. We used something called active ontologies that we had pioneered. We got patents on it. That was the core AI technology that powered Siri. So that overnight success of 2.5 months, it took a little longer. It actually took 2.5 years to get there. But that wasn't the beginning either. Before I started the company, I actually worked for 5 years on the largest AI project in government-funded history. It was called CALO, which stood for Cognitive Assistant that Learns and Organizes. It was a $250 million project for 5 years, paid for by the US government, their Advanced Research Projects Agency. Here you can see a little bit the tools that we had created called active ontologies that became the core technology we used for Siri. But it was a lot of work to kind of do research before we were ready to start the company. So that 2.5 month overnight success, it took longer than you'd expect. But that's not the beginning either, because in the 90s, I created all sorts of assistant systems. So I had, these are a bunch. I had a TV, you can't see it here, that you could talk to, and it would control your house literally by using the remote control button. You could say, do I have any ice cream in the fridge? And it would talk to an e-fridge that we had created that knew the contents of everything that was in it. We built augmented reality systems that you could talk to and say, hey, as you're driving in your car, you could point at the windshield and say, what building is that? And it would match the image, figure out where you were, use 3D models to identify the building, and then project information about that building on your windshield. We had office applications. So in the 90s, tons of work before we did that research project I told you about. And this is the first version of Siri 30 years ago this year, 1993. In fact, it was so long ago, it was before the web existed. So, I had this kind of iPad-like device in 1993. You could use a pen to do handwriting recognition and it would turn it into text. So you could draw on the display. You could actually talk to it, and it would do pretty much everything that came out on Siri decades later. You had maps where you could say, find me French restaurants in this area, and you would draw and they would appear. You could send emails to your boss. Here it says, when mail arrives for me about some topic, notify me immediately by telephone. And it would translate the email into audio and find out which room you were in and call you and play you the important message you were waiting for. So I guess the lesson of this story is ideas can take time to develop. So find topics that you're interested in and work on them. Get excited about them, get passionate. Here you see 18 years from first prototype to commercial release. Siri came out in 2010, but 2011. In 1993, I was building and creating and dreaming and just getting my hands dirty. So that's the first lesson. If you want to be an entrepreneur, it's never about the quick flip, the instant overnight success. It's about finding something you care about and working on it, and at the right time, coming out with a commercial version. So how do you find the right time? I say that even though I had worked on Siri for 30 years, if I had come out with Siri as a company anytime earlier or anytime later, it would have failed. You can be too early and fail. So I use something I call trends and triggers. I make predictions of the world about where the world is going. Take around and look, maybe you saw the Apple Vision Pro. Make a prediction. Is it going to be a big thing or not? Is it the time or not? Bitcoin, AI, how is AI going to evolve? Make predictions about how it's going to improve. And then look for what I call trigger moments that let you know that your prediction is now true. So in 2004, kind of around the middle of this slide, it was the 10th anniversary from the web, which started in 94, 95. So I made 10 predictions for the next 10 years. Some of it was about data going to the cloud. Some of it was about machine learning is going to start to become important. It wasn't in 2004 when I made the prediction. And I said there will be a new interface revolution. The companies that manage the cloud data, the Googles and Amazons, are not the same as the companies that provide the best interfaces for the data. So in 2007, the iPhone came out, and a lot of people thought the iPhone would fail. They said, oh, Apple just makes this music player. They had this thing called the iPod. It's like this big. You'd listen to songs with it. They can't make something as complicated as a phone. This is going to fail. But I had been waiting for a new revolution. I had predicted a new revolution at the interface, apps with pinch and zoom and scroll and multi-touch. was just what I was waiting. So I knew the iPhone would be successful. So I said, 2 years from now, every handset manufacturer, telecommunications company, they're all going to have to beat or compete with Apple. What are the problems with the iPhone? Well, the screen is small, the keyboard's kind of hard to type, it's a soft keyboard, and the round trip time was really slow. It was on 3G. Took a minute. If you clicked on a web link, it would take a minute round trip before the next page would come. I go, when you buy something like on Amazon or whatever, it's like 10 clicks. That would take 10 minutes on a mobile phone. Too long. No one's going to do that. And so I said, well, what if we had Siri, where in just one round trip, you could say, without typing on a small screen, get me 2 tickets to the basketball game tonight. And it said, here they are, ready to confirm. And you say, yes, that would be better. So when I saw the iPhone, I looked ahead, said, what will the world need? What can I provide? And that's when I said, it's time to start a company. And we did that and built over those 2 years the technology that was needed to time the market. So second lesson, make predictions. I call those trends about the future, and look for the trigger moments that confirm. Another quick example, I started change.org. I had made a prediction in 2004 that social networks were going to take off. This was before Facebook, before Instagram, TikTok, any of this. Crazy idea. But in 2006, MySpace became the #1 most trafficked website in the US. And I said, social networks are coming. My prediction is true. It was a music social network, all about music, but I knew it was coming. So that's when in 2006, we started change.org. Today, it's grown to be 500 million people, more than that. So there's an example again of making a prediction, social network is coming, seeing the trigger moment. Oh my gosh, here's one social network that succeeded. There's going to be many, and then jumping in at the right time, which is essential for a business. Lesson 3, do something hard. If you're going to be an entrepreneur and work on an idea, it's going to consume all of your time. And, it could be a fun little toy project, or it could be a life-changing, 100 million person project. It's going to take the same amount of time, the same amount of effort. So my third lesson for you is, when you're thinking of an idea, reach big. Say, how will it be big enough that it's worth me spending all that time? And I talk about 3 pieces. One is, what's big? Well, it should be able to reach at least 100 million users, right? Siri has been on 2 billion phones. Change.org, 500 million users, more. My Viv was on 400 million devices. Sentient produced good value. So try to find a problem to solve, or a task that has a lot of people would care about. These are all examples about different types of things that had lots of users. They found something that many people would want. YouTube, eBay, change.org, Instagram. So, on change.org, we got lesson number 4. So change.org today is the world's largest petition platform. If you see anything wrong in the world, you can start a petition, say, I want this person or this organization to make this change, and here's why. That's what it is. 3 steps. This person or organization to make this specific change, here's why. So you don't just say, I want world peace. That's not actionable. You propose an actionable change. And then if people like it, they click on it. Now, follow the data. Why is this an important lesson? We did not start out to be a petition platform. In fact, we tried everything else. We were, we connected you to your local politician, so you could just click and their phone would ring, and you could tell a politician what you wanted changed in the world. You could fund through nonprofits we made it easy to send money in a viral way to nonprofits. We did a gifting platform. We did the largest job board for social conscious jobs when the economy crashed in 2008, 9. We said, go back to work. So we tried a million things. But the thing we did right is we instrumented everything. We had a ton of data about what users did. And we saw that the petition started to get a little bit more traction with users. So we moved it a bit more to the center. We made it a little bit bigger. We started to fade away other things. And in the end, we ended up with just a petition platform. That's not how we started. And our growth went from 1 million users year one, 1 million users year two, 1 million year three, 1 million year four. Then it went 1 to 10, 10 to 25, 25 to 50, 50 to 100, 125, etc. And we're now over 500 million members. So all came from following the data. So the first viral petition in the US was a 20-year-old nanny named Molly Catchpole. This was around 2010. The economy had crashed. Our banking system was a mess, and we were using our taxes to bail out the financial institutions, Bank of America and all Citibank and all these. And then Bank of America said, we want to charge a new fee on debit cards. And this 20-year-old nanny in New York said, we're using our taxpayer money to give you, to basically save you. And now you want to charge us fees to get our own money out of our bank. And she wrote a petition on change.org, and it went viral nationwide. Everyone was so angry about this cause that it took off. And not only did they get Bank of America to change and take away the fee, there were a bunch of other banks who were all like brewing up to offer the same kind of fee, and it wiped all of that out. So that was the first viral one. Internationally, the first viral one was the country of Uganda had a law that sanctioned corrective rape for lesbians, which is a horrible idea. Corrective rape for lesbians. And it became a human issue internationally. Everyone said this is horrible. And there was so much pressure put on the Ugandan government that they actually changed the law because it became a nationwide international thing. So those were the first two big ones, but there have been so many. I don't know if you ever heard of Trayvon Martin. He was a young Black boy in Florida who was shot, and the person who had killed him was still walking around. His mother started a petition that went viral. It became, again, a big racial issue in this country that he should at least be brought to trial to see if it was self-defense or if he was guilty. But at least that was the request. Bring him to trial. My son was killed. Let's find out the circumstances, etc. So there have been many. There have been ones with hundreds of Nobel Prize winners who have signed petitions. But the first one was a 20-year-old Molly Catchpole about Bank of America finances. So one is try to find something that lots of people will want to use. Another is find something that a lot of people will want to buy, or a few people want to spend a lot of money, or a lot of people want to spend a little money. So revenue is another way to say, is it big? Is it hard? And the third is create a differentiated platform, some technology that doesn't exist, but that will change the world. And so these are kind of technology companies. Siri, as you know, was the first conversational assistant. PowerSet, these are old, it's an old slides, but was kind of a natural language search. Lingo did speech recognition. Sumly, I'm going to talk a little bit about Sumly. So a lot of people say, well, I'm not an AI expert. I don't have a PhD. I can't start a technology hard patented company. Well, I think anyone can do it. Sumly was a successful example, and this is the founder of Sumly. His name was Nick Delosio. He was 15 years old. He looked 13. I mean, you can see he was in his bedroom. He called me up one day while I was at Apple, said and kind of pitched me. He says, I'm an AI CEO. And he was so smart. It just blew me away. I asked him technical questions, business questions, and he said, "Oh, I'm 15." I'm like, I can't comprehend that someone 15 would be that, had thought through so many different things, knew so many different things. So I asked him to send me a picture. He sent me this picture, and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. But I said, I'll have another meeting with you. And I started to mentor him. A year and a half later, so what did Sumly do? It was a summarization app. Again, this was around 2012. So he said, kids my age, we don't want to read long articles. So he created this beautiful news reader where it would give you kind of a title and a very short summary. And if you were in, and you could scroll through a lot of these, and if you saw an article you liked, you could double tap and it would get a little bit longer, like 2 paragraphs. And then if you liked it, it would then give you the full article. So it was doing summarization on the fly before ChatGPT. A year and a half later, 17 years old, he now looks a little bit more styled. He grew up a bit. He actually sold his company while he was in high school to Yahoo for many tens of millions of dollars. He just had 3 people in the entire company. He went to work there as an executive in product area, all while and he did that for about 2 years, and then he graduated high school and he quit so he could go to college. But it just shows that anyone can learn enough about technology to take a differentiated platform approach, like a Siri, assembly, etc. So my last lesson, visualize success. And I'll tell you just a quick story. So I remember we had just started Siri. We were a couple of people, and we walked into an Apple store, and this is what it looked like. I took the photo, and on the wall, the iPhone had just come out. There were apps. And so on the wall, this was not the actual photo. I kind of photoshopped it, but there were icons of all the big companies in the world: Facebook, Pandora, Google, Skype, Twitter, X, I guess now. But and I was like saying, what would success look like? And I dreamed my biggest dream. I said, someday our little company, our little crazy effort will be so big, it'll be right there on an Apple Store wall next to the biggest. I mean, Google had tens of thousands of people and PhDs, and Facebook, tens of thousands of people. But I said, someday we'll be on the wall of an Apple Store. That was my visualizing success. And I took that picture in my mind. So then fast forward 2 years, out comes Siri launching on the iPhone. And I went back to that same store, and this is what I saw. On the front door of the Apple Store, they had a big sign saying, introducing Siri. And underneath it was a plasma display running Siri use cases, made up to look like an iPhone, running Siri use cases on a loop. And I remember the juxtaposition, trying to dream and visualize what would success look like, and wanting to be one icon on on the wall out of 100 with the Google and Skype and others. And here we are, the front door. It was beyond my imagination. It just gave me chills. And it was one of the coolest moments in my life. And I've done this time and time again. When I start a project that I want to go out and take, I dream and I say, what would success look like? I take a picture of it in my mind. And more often than not, reality will exceed my wildest dreams in the early years. And that's really the fun part of being an entrepreneur. So in summary, 5 lessons to take your computing and AI knowledge out into the world to start projects or maybe companies eventually. Number one, find an idea that you're interested in, because it may take longer to find the right time to develop it as a commercial entity. But just work on it, pursue your passions. Number two, before you do it as a company, make sure that you can catch the wave. And I say there were no voice assistants before Siri. There were many after, Alexa and Google Assistant and Cortana. There were no machine learning clouds before Sentient. Obviously, there were many after. There were no social networks for social change before change.org. So in every case, I managed to find the right time. It's like a wave surfing. If you're on a surfboard and a wave comes too early, you don't go anywhere. If it breaks too late, you don't go anywhere. But if you catch it at the right moment, you travel far. So look for trends and triggers to time the commercial rollout to go on a good ride. Number three, pick something a lot of people will care about. Do something big, do something hard. Instrument the data and learn from it. We never set out to be a petition platform originally, but that's where the data led us, the usage and users led us. And now we're over 500 million members. And then finally, as you're dreaming of your journey, ask the question, what would success look like? And more often than not, it actually happens way better than you could ever have dreamed in the first place. And that's like the coolest part. Yeah, that's a great question. So I have more ideas than I can pursue. I'm always coming up with ideas. I love to prototype things, um, and work on things. So I'm always creating ideas and playing. Like you saw in this presentation, I gave examples. I built 50 versions of Siri for fun and for no reason, just because it was cool to me. Um, the trigger events, like I said, a lot of times they happen in the world and you don't really know, other people don't know that they're trigger events because they don't fit into your prediction. But if you try to make these predictions and you have opinions about, like, is augmented reality going to take off? Is Bitcoin going to replace, or cryptocurrency going to replace real currency? If you like think about these questions that are not quite answered yet, research them and make predictions. Then when you have those predictions, those trends, trigger moments let you predict the future. It's kind of like having a lottery ticket, knowing the answers. Like, I knew the iPhone would be successful. Most people didn't, because it met all of my criteria. And so I could say, all right, if the iPhone's going to be successful in 2 years, what do I do? What's the world going to need? What's the competitors going to need? And that's never really failed me. If I have the trend and I see a trigger moment, that's usually worked out for me to know it's now the right time. And I do a bunch of experiments and I test it in various ways, but that's kind of how I approach it. You kind of have to live with what you've got. In 1993, we did not have the compute power that there is today. Probably a supercomputer had less than is in my iPhone today. But speech recognition worked to some extent. Natural language worked to some extent. And, it was more domain specific. It wasn't ChatGPT that you could ask it anything, but it was still enough to be useful. And, as long as you have enough, a computer is the ultimate tool. Anything you dream, you can make an approximation of it. It may not work perfectly, but I never said, oh, there's something I can't do. at least reasonably well. Because as an entrepreneur, you get excited, you dream, you build, you try. It works somewhat. And eventually everything gets better, everything gets faster, everything gets cheaper. So again, you have to factor that in of, is it the right time? Is it good enough technology to work commercially? In the 90s, speech recognition and natural language. I mean, we actually our team spun out a company called Nuance, which became the most significant, most important natural speech company in the world for a few decades. It went public, worth billions of dollars. But they couldn't handle everything, but they could find the applications where the technology would fit. So I guess you have to, commercially, you have to live within the constraints of what can be done and find applications. So you should be dreaming and playing with everything and building, and there are no constraints. You can build anything. You should go into it with that attitude. And usually you can, get pretty close. Well, first of all, it's always more fun to work on a project with somebody. In those 90s, the 1990s, I had one or two friends. We would dive into these projects with passion and enthusiasm. It was so much fun. We worked on weekends. We didn't care. Like, this was play for us. And so everything's more fun if you can find a person who lifts your energy and compliments you. At a company, you will need 4 skills in your founding team. And you should figure out, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you should figure out which of these skills are you great at and which ones are you not great at. And then try to find friends with complementary skills. Because when you start your company, investors are going to look at the team you have, and they're going to look, can this team pull off these 4 functions? So what are the 4 functions? Number one, you need a visionary, someone who sees the big picture, understands how the world is going to change if your thing comes true. Like, what would the world be like if you could just talk to machines? Right? That was the far vision of Siri. The second thing is you need a product person. So yeah, it'd be great if you could talk to every screen, every machine, everything, but here's how we're going to get there. Step 1, we're going to do this. We're just going to do the iPhone. Step 2, we'll get to TV. Step 3, we'll get to refrigerators, whatever. Like, you need a roadmap, someone who can take the big vision, break it down into sensible steps, and know why you're doing this first, this second, and this third in that order. So that's really a product person who can put together a roadmap. The third is you need a marketeer. You need someone who can sell the vision, and raise money from investors, convince customers that this is going to be important, convince prospective employees that this is cool. And the fourth is you need the builder, the person who'll stand up and say, I will deliver the product and the technology on time and on budget. And so those are the 4 skills you need to be a successful in a company. And it doesn't have to be 4 different people, but it's usually not one person can do all 4 at a world-class level. So figure out who you are, develop your skills, meet complementary people with other skills. Don't just meet people with the same skills as you. It doesn't work. I once, a founder came and said, will you be an advisor for my company? I said, who are your co-founders? And who are you and who are your co-founders? Excuse me. He says, I'm a designer. I actually worked on the Skype team. It's one of the lead designers for Skype. Cool. And who are your co-founders? He goes, oh, I have 3 co-founders and they're all designers too. And I'm like, no, that's a disaster. Like, you do not want 4 of one type of person and none of the other. I go, this isn't going to work. I'm not getting involved. So, that's what I would say about teams.